part of this video real quick. It's on. It's space.
I thought I watched this dirt.
Yeah.
You haven't got a pretty screen.
But this is basically what I saw. It's on us doing in the space.
I thought I watched this dirt.
One-off. It was a little bonus.
Screen.
But this is basically what I saw. It's on us doing in the space.
I thought I watched this dirt.
One-off. It was a little bonus.
Screen.
But this is basically what I saw. It's on us doing in the space.
I thought I watched this dirt.
One-off.
Hey guys, I need 2 security at Rebels tonight, 6 to 10. Who wants it? Hey guys, who wants it? Please confirm tonight, 6 to 10. Who wants it?
Basically, it's like they're on prison ship. They're doing absolutely nothing. Rescue that guy.
Show me after.
It's a little too close. Yeah. It's too close. There's a video showing him. This is basically what we ended up doing at the... What I recognize, like, the video is like, this is basically what we did when we were at the site.
This is episode 9, ain't it?
I believe so, yeah. 8 or 9.
We've been doing this show for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. I always promote before we get started. You starting or me?
I can start. I don't have my watch on though.
Looks like we're live.
Yep.
1 minute.
1 minute. Got plenty of time.
God, it's like a full minute. So party balance.
Yep. It's ought to be fun.
Everybody go paladin.
You want paladins and just some super spell druids.
Yeah. Alright, I think we're live now. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Tabletop RPG Now. We are Corey Dallas here with John.
Hello.
This is the show where old school meets the new school.
Old school beats the new school.
Where new school shows some old school, these old timers, how to properly do things.
Oh wow!
So today's episode we'll be talking about party balance, right?
Party balance. That's right. You know, in this show we often argue with each other on your behalf, debating on what is not necessarily right or wrong, but what way seems to be more efficient than others. So. As always, if you're arguing with your awesome DM or if your DM have a problem with a stupid player, feel free to shoot us your questions and I'll shut Corey up. In fact, as you can see, we have 1 DM and 2 players here. We've had to start doubling up on the players to try to even it out a little bit. Now, today's party balance, and we're going to talk about various ways to build parties, various ways to get started, and what seems to be most effective. Right?
Right.
Yep.
In your John, you've I guess you have more time than Corey. So
good deal. Yeah, I mean, I started about 4 or 5 years ago. I just haven't had a constant stream of experience.
Okay. So, in your experience, what ways have you seen parties built? Beginning at level 1, like new games.
Beginning at level 1, I've seen a couple different ways. I've seen the point buy method. I've seen rolling straight down like you do in your games, and I've seen rolling and then putting stats together, all of which, aside from the rolling straight down, the other two you can generally work with your party and pick out rolls as you best see them. Rolling straight down is a little different because your stats may not support the character.
Corey?
Well, I've seen your way.
Okay.
And that's
the right
it.
way.
How do you feel about this is kind of, I guess, a newer way that some people that I've kind of read about some people doing, is where they do each person's rolling their 3d6 or 4d6, but instead of using it for their stats, they put it into a pool, and then they have the party collaboratively decide who's getting what stats where.
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that we all have this right. So I roll 3d6, say 36. I roll 36, I get a 12. I put 12 points in the pool. You roll 36, you get a 14. You put 14 points in the pool. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, those are the numbers, basically, and those are the numbers that the whole party has access to. Once somebody takes that one number, then that number's gone or whatever.
So it depends on the kind of game. If you're running Adventure League, or if you're running just a straight hack and slash module and you want to see how you can survive and get through it, I don't see a problem with it. As a whole, I don't like it. And the reason why I don't like it is because I don't like min-max. And, I mean, let's be honest. Most people would min-max in that regard. Right? So I'm not a fan of min-max. And my games don't support min-max because characters that min-max in my world usually die. And they don't die because I target them. They just don't have the durability overall as a surrounding to survive. Just recently, a character who wasn't really min-max but was strong and was built to be strong in one of my side games died when he got critically hit by a wyvern, and so with stinger poison. And I got to tell you, monsters hitting and critting and doing double damage, I mean, that can be very, very strong against somebody. And if you're min-max and you put all your points in strength or charisma, and you're like, well, I'm usually in the back, I don't ever really get hit. That one time that you get popped for the wrong thing, like in this case, could kill you because the guy had an 8 con.
And that's a kind of a big difference between tabletop and MMOs. And MMOs they try and get the party rolls down solid. So like if you have a tank, your tank's usually going to be able to hold aggro on the mob or mobs, and your damage dealers can focus on dealing damage as opposed to building HP or anything. But in tabletop games where the DM can just say, yeah, I ignore the tank and go straight for all the squishies, it's a little bit different. You have to be a little bit more cautious on how you build your characters.
Right. And I don't know if John ever saw this, but so many ages ago there was a game called Hero Quest.
I believe I have seen that, yeah.
So Hero Quest was a game. It was a precursor to it was kind of like D&D for dummies. Like it was a great game. Don't get me wrong, but it was a basic style game that if you played Hero Quest and you liked Hero Quest, Dungeons and Dragons would be your next step up. Okay, so the thing with Hero Quest is that became kind of an issue was that your fighter, your wizard, your cleric, and your thief, so to speak, Dragon Strike, Dark World, I know there was rangers and stuff like that, but essentially your striker, controller, your leader, and your defender, they did specific roles, and each time they went into a room, they literally did the exact same thing. So literally the guy running the game did not have to ask him what they were doing. He could say, you guys go in the room, this is how everyone does every single thing every single time, and this is what happens. And being effective is one thing. Like, if you as a group learn to be cohesive as a party, that's really fun to see how you're, as a DM, it's fun to watch your party kind of struggle until they find like their method and they find like a cohesiveness. But if you say, hey, John, I'm going to play a fighter, and my fighter archetype goes really well if you go with Arcane Trickster because he's going to be behind me. And if you're doing this before that you even heard the story of the game, it takes a lot of the learning how to be cohesive together. So part of the reason I don't like the fact, I like games where sometimes roles aren't filled. And as a DM, it's your job to make sure that they have crutches that can be found throughout the game to help alleviate the pain of not having those roles. But if you have a game where you make sure every role is filled every single time, I'm not saying it's like standard, or I'm just saying it can create really unique situations if a party doesn't have a healer, so they have to spend 40% of their gold on potions of healing. You know what I mean? So you may find people, they may have the rogue go out and steal money so they can get potions of healing so they can save the town. Right? If you have a healer, you kind of negate all those options.
And that's kind of one of the things that is kind of unique about tabletop games, is that because of its adaptive nature, you don't have to have the quote unquote core group of tank, heal, and DPS.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of, within reason, go all branch off. Have like 3 DPS and a tank, or 3 healers and nobody else. And it while may not be optimal, it can feasibly work. Whereas in a lot of video games, if you tried that, you just get wrecked by everything.
Yeah, which is the difference.
Yeah.
And John, you were before we got started today, you were talking about something, and I'm gonna bring it up, and I'm gonna let John explain it because I think he did a pretty good job. On one of the forums, one of the guys had said that his biggest issue with 5th edition, coming from 3rd edition, he had never played 4th, was that one of his biggest issues was that no one's ever going to be Drit Stewart. He said that he's like, I'm never going to be able to make a character that's like Drit Stewart, and like I'm always going to have my party. I'm always going to... And in my opinion, you should never be able to play a Drit.
I think that's a good thing.
it's a team game, right? So like, if I said, hey guys, I'm going to create a character, and I want you guys to create side characters in my backstory who love me. We're going to focus this game on me. Like, it's not exactly fun for the other players, right?
Right.
And so, how did you explain that a while ago?
The way I explained it, it's Drit Stewart is not meant to be a playable character in most games. In most games, the Drit Stewart idea is the one NPC that is like the ruler of the land, I am looking down on you because I am so great. Players in a group are not supposed to be able to be that one-man army, because if you are that one-man army, why is the rest of the group with you? They're going to feel inferior. They're going to see, we don't need to help this guy. He can go off and do this adventure by himself. Why are we following him? And the rest of the group will go on their own way, and that person will be left there. Or the counter to this is there are some games where you can play that Drit Stewart character that you want to play, but in those games, you are not the only one. Everyone is that strong, and everything out there is trying to kill you, usually in one hit.
And that's the nature of cooperative games, right? Is that there needs to be a balance, a somewhat balance in the power of the people who are actually playing, or else, things can get a little bit, people will get resentful, people they'll start to hate each other.
I ran a game one time many years ago, and there were 5 players, and I got to tell you, I thought the game was going to end real life friendships because their characters actively hated one another. Like literally was plotting. Like, as soon as this is over, I'm killing him first, and if the rest of them kill me, so be it. As long as I can make the killing blow on this guy, I'll be happy. And But when they were super cohesive, they worked well together, and they didn't let anyone else mess with them, right? Like, I don't like Corey, but if I see Corey getting beat up, I know Corey's gonna, go druid and let me, jump on him as a rhino, and he's my mount in combat, and if someone kills him now, I don't get to do that later, so I don't like Corey, but I have to protect him because I need my rhino.
Right,
like,
and that's kind of one of the things, and it's actually come up in our game where people are kind of at odds with each other, and I think it was Craig who asked me, is like, why aren't you attacking them? Why aren't you doing such and such to them?
Right.
I was like, well, they're in our party. That means I trust them. I may not like them personally. I may not agree with their decisions, but the fact that they're in our party and they're not booted out of our party means that we trust them to do what needs to be done. It's kind of an all-in thing for me. Like, either we trust them enough that we can give them this magic, or we can give them this stuff, or they're not in our party. Like, why are they in our party if we don't trust them?
And that's another thing. Talking about party, talking about game and character design and things like that. I see a lot of questions for DMs saying, "How do I get my characters more, more involved in the story?" The biggest thing I can tell you is use your party's background. And this is probably the 5th episode out of 9 that I've said that. Use your party's background and history. If they don't have one, create one for them. Right? If they come to the game with no backstory, they're giving you the open opportunity to give them one, because they didn't come with one, right? So I'm telling you to use those things to your advantage. I'm telling you the things that, when you think of a world hero, when you think of your favorite novel character that's a hero, it doesn't have to be fantasy. It can be James Bond, Dirk Pitt. It can be anybody, Dritz Duerden, Raistlin Magier. It could be anybody you want it to be. Some of the things that really make those characters stand out, like Wolfgar and Brunner Battleham, like all those guys that you're thinking of, Elminster. The thing that makes those characters stand out is not what they're good at, but it's their flaws. It's their character flaws. Like, it's their character flaws that really make them personable, that really make them human, so to speak. And so when you give your character, like in our game, Corey was casting a spell at dawn because his faith requires like certain spells to be cast at the beginning of the morning. It's considered like the proper time to cast magic, even though he could have done the same spell at the end of the day and had the spell the next day. Like, he openly did that because that's what his faith wanted him to do. Mechanically speaking, he got nothing for it other than favor from his god.
Or to even go more recent, with the battle at Seraphim Falls, where you had an incident happen where I had the opportunity to lie, or just to not say anything at all,
right? And
I would get huge benefits for doing so,
right?
And my character actively knew he would get huge benefits for doing so because it was a very obvious thing, and he still chose to do what he would do because that's what he is. Like, that's part of. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, part of his character is that he doesn't lie, and not lying, being honest is sometimes a good thing. A lot of times it's a bad thing.
Right.
There's a lot of situations where it is bad and you should lie. But that's part of being that character, is that he's going to act that way even if mechanically it's not the best optimal thing for him to do.
And John, just curious, in same situation, what would Caltech have done?
Caltech? Well, given that Caltech was completely oblivious to the fact that it was a lie because of how badly he rolled, he would have just kept spreading it.
That's right.
Had he known, he probably would have, for the morale of the troops, kept it a secret.
So there you have it. Two guys who were allies or friends, and they have two different perspectives. And so, and that gives character development, character involvement. And a lot of your best books and a lot of your best stories are not plot driven. They're character driven. And so, as a DM, if you make your story party driven, so don't so much worry about I saw this meme using Dritz, and it was a picture, I think, from the 10,000 Orcs novel where he's coming down and he's surrounded by orcs, and it says, when your DM's NPC is more important than the entire story at hand. Like, you don't want, as a DM, if you have to abandon a story arc for the development of your party, that should be okay, and they can always come back to it, right? So, assuming time doesn't travel or time doesn't move forward into where they lose the ability, the siege was taken, they didn't stop it in time, etc. So, continuing with party balance, I think it depends. If you got a guy who's running Adventure League and he's coming to you and he's saying, "This is what I'm doing, blah blah blah. This is the game we're running. These are the modules we're running." You probably don't need a backstory. It's more or less encounters, and you're just kind of playing through the tactics of it all. Whereas if you're playing a story-driven game, a lot of people shun me, or they don't like the idea that I prefer 3d6 straight down. As a player, I prefer 3d6 straight down. If you roll below a 7, I tell you to take a 7. I also have a plethora of ways in the game for your stats to go up, right? Like, your stats will, go up and down throughout the course of the game. I think that me sitting at a table and hoping that I get the stats for a character I want to play is a lot more fun than the group getting together and pulling stats together so we can optimize to me, that's just optimization. And again, it's not just mine, but in story-driven games where the DM is trying to create a compelling story and it's not just a lot of combat, I don't think min-max characters survive. The only thing that they're built for is combat, and a lot of times certain monsters can be like their kryptonite because of the way they're built. I saw a character one time who was, it was a warlock in 4E. This guy, the guy that played Dane, had him, and this warlock could 1v1 just about anything up to about 4 levels above him. Actually, it was above her. No, it was him. Excuse me. But if you sent a swarm of minions, 1 hit point minions after him, you'd probably kill him. He'd probably die. Like, he was not meant to fight minions, so he had to just assume that there was someone in the party that could handle minions, and if the wizard was down, he was probably going to die. So now there was another way to build that warlock that he was completely aware of, that could have kept him alive had he played, and the character didn't die, he almost died, but I'm saying he could have stayed alive and been fine had he chosen to take a little bit less potent powers in the event they ran across minions. But he just said, I want to focus and target on 1v1 powerful bosses and solos, and this is how I'm going to do it. And because he did that, he left himself open to weaker type characters or creatures.
And I think that's kind of one of the things, and that actually does tie into party balance, right? Is you can build characters that do one specific thing really well and they suck at everything else, with the kind of expectation, assuming you're working with the other party members when you're actually building these guys, so they don't just show up to the game and they're like, well, what the F? Why didn't you pay Pally?
6 players and no paladins, no druids. I quit.
Anyway, you can, he's not saying that you can't play characters like that and not rely on your teammates to cover your weaknesses, and that's, a good party should be covering your weaknesses, but it's a double-edged sword, right? If the person covering your weaknesses gets dropped, then you're wide open.
What if you get separated?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of situations where it does hurt you, where that you're so extreme on the scale of things, and that's kind of the risk you take, right? Like, if you're building a character like that, you should know that is a possibility that can happen. Like, I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say that it's a wrong way to play your character. If that's what you want to do, you should just go in with the realization that, hey, I may be put in situations where I'm useless.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, I want to, compliment you, both of you guys on, is I'm very fortunate to have players like Corey and John because, they have character backstory, concept, and theory before they have stats, and John does very well at adapting to things that happen to him in game. Corey's the same way.
Losing limbs.
His orc is like a baker now that wears a hat. He's like, I can bake goods because of this one thing that happened to him in the game. So now he's taken to this, baking rolls and stuff. And again, this all goes to party balance and party development. And again, I'm not saying that I'm built for 1v1 so my wizard can handle the minions. I'm just saying that 50, 60, 70, 80% of the time that's going to work. But in the one case that you guys get separated or his magic gets shut down, maybe his god gets struck in the time of troubles and his god cannot offer faith, can't offer spells momentarily, and you didn't take this one, one power that, or one ability that could help you take on minions because there was a 1v1 power that was just so awesome, and you just targeted those 1v1 abilities and 1v1 magic, and now you have no durability. You don't have when you build characters and you focus on one thing, you just unless the thing you focus on is con, you don't have durability. And so I'm not saying con's the best stat. I'm not saying that stats are the only thing that you should spread out. I'm just saying that not every tiefling should be a charisma based caster. You know what I mean? Like the last tiefling I played was a rogue, and there are far better rogue races out there, but I played a Charlatan rogue tiefling, and again, could I have been a better race to go with my rogue? Of course, but I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool concept. He was a sly little devil, right? So, John, what is the biggest mismatch in a party you've seen?
Biggest mismatch in a party. Ironically, it's actually a game that I was running. Since that point, we've changed the characters around a little, so it's a little more balanced. But we had a party where, in Pathfinder, we had an oracle.
Whoa, what?
We're in Pathfinder in this. Hold on. I know. Calm. It's okay.
Go cut to commercial.
It'll all be okay. We had an oracle, which is essentially... An oracle is to a cleric what a sorcerer is to a wizard. We had a sorcerer in the party. We had a wizard in the party. And we had a fighter. So, we were very... very caster heavy on this, and we had one.
Everyone
fighter.
Buffed the fighter.
that was I was actually playing the oracle in that because we didn't really have that many people, and I said, okay, I'm going to play a healer because I know not many people like to play that, and that's a role that often gets overlooked, and it is an important role. I was almost constantly up there, either buffing or healing or doing something as per what I kind of needed to do to keep the party alive. Granted, we made it okay. We were level 1, so we didn't die horrible deaths at the hand of a dragon, but since then, we've had a couple more players come in, and I've been able to kind of step back on it. Like, my character can kind of step back and not do as much direct intervening in the story and let them kind of run it. And we've got a monk now, we've got a summoner in there as well, so we've got 2 more melee combatants to kind of help take over for that.
And that's one thing, I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to touch on what you just said.
Pathfinder?
No, the real game. No, guys, we're making jokes. Pathfinder's a great game. It's cool, but and for universal purposes, we're going to continue to call it a summoner, conjurer, whatever the case may be. So there are spells in most of your fantasy games. I want to say the one that one of our Carrie was using was animate objects. Is that right?
Oh yeah, that makes inanimate objects basically turned into summoned creatures.
Okay, so we have another guy that plays a conjurer who summons Magman and all this other stuff, right? That can be very, very tricky, and it can be time consuming and complicated. And I know a lot of DMs prefer not to use summoner style, conjurer style characters because they believe that they take too much party time up, they take too much combat time up when they're summoning things. In the particular instance that he's talking about in Pathfinder, where he had 3 casters and a fighter, if I was DMing, I would have the wizard constantly finding simple spells, even if I had to make them up to where he could summon like scrolls, to where he could summon like simple things to help fight, even if it was for the day or something, right? Like you can build on that, and then this wizard who may have been an enchanter, charmer, starts. Maybe you find a different type of spell where you transmutate them into something. Basically, maybe you possess simple people with the minds of fallen heroes for the day, and that guy walks with you. Yeah, you put this guy's body through hell. He may die, and that's kind of a dark thing to do, but maybe this guy does it. Or maybe you can temporarily summon, a fragmentation of a former hero that died 100 years ago, and the party gets a level 3 fighter for the day or something, and it dissipates. And creating simple things like that will help you create that character development, that character-driven development.
No, I did not actually.
That helps with that character development that we're talking about. It also helps with party balance. It also helps with your caster heavy. You give them things that work temporarily for the time until they get strong enough to where they don't need. And when you have a party like John's here, it's kind of cool because they're not going into combat with the same attitude that a fighter, wizard, cleric, and thief would go into combat with, right? Or 4 fighters, 2 wizards, a cleric, and a rogue. So I had a group one time that every one of them played rogues, and everything they did was ambush. They would have one rogue go pick the fight, and when everything would start chasing them, the rest of them would jump them. And that's how they handled business, because they were a bunch of rogues. And it was a game that took place mostly inside of a city, but characters and players come up with cool tactics and designs when their party isn't evenly, perfectly balanced and optimized.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty standard thing to do is you kind of, when you're playing any strategy game, and that's kind of what this is a strategy game, right? When you're actually playing the battles and stuff, is you look at what you have and then you say, how can I best effectively use this? For example, when we came across the purple worm the other day, and I was playing like 7 dudes at the time. I was playing like 7 PCs at the time.
So let's back up though, right? So our party, our main group, there are 8 player characters. And Corey and John here, their characters, again, talking about playing your character, not min-maxing, they had an army, and the advantage that Corey got from going with his army was dismal. And so he could have stayed with the group, but as a character, he felt he was obligated to be there for the morale of his troops. So he split with the party. He's actually playing an NPC that went with the party, that swore to him and joined the party, etc., or swore to the group, I should say. And they swore fealty to the group. And so we had to take time away from. This was not played on our normal standard day.
And I just want to say real quick that it's very cool. I made that decision with the full expectation, that the story goes with the party. So I was my character was just gonna be out for a while, and it was very cool of them to kind of bring me to the side. And it's like, hey, you want to do this side mission on on a free day or whatever.
And it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
He brought some champions out of his army. Caltech came with him, which is John.
Yep.
And we did a side quest, and I guess you could go into your story.
Yeah. So anyway, we were pretty beat up, and we came across this purple worm, and like I had all my character sheets spread out all over the place. So I was looking at him. I was like, well, I don't think that we can fight this purple worm head on because we're all pretty busted up. Like, and the last time we came across a purple worm, he destroyed an entire city. So I was looking at it from the mentality. I was like, so I can't beat this creature face to face. What do I have at my disposal that I can use against him to win this encounter? Winning the encounter for me meant getting an object that the purple worm had in his possession, and
It was eating.
yeah, he was eating.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I'm holding it like, haha, I'm your end boss.
It's like, nope, nom, nom.
He was just hungry.
Yeah, I mean, he had an object and he was eating it, and I needed to get that object. That was basically, and in my character's eyes, I was the win condition for that combat. You know, not every combat I have to beat the enemy to win. My win condition was getting this object. So I looked at what I had. I happened to have Hold Monster. You know, I was like, let's give it a go.
Well, one of your NPCs had Hold Monster.
Yeah, one of the many characters I had Hold Monster, fortunately, and so I gave it a go, and he failed his save like 12 times. So we had a nice little tea party down there while we gathered up our stuff and
Got a bite to eat. Did some looking around.
We had to check all those nooks and crannies for gold.
That's right. And ultimately, they escaped the cavern or the fissure. They escaped the basically the crevice in the ground. They brought the object up. It was half dissolved from being eaten, but they escaped. And so, which goes into something that we talked about before. That's not the concept of today, but it's encounters. DMs out there. Talking about party balance, encounters kind of go hand in hand a little bit. You know, make sure that your encounters are not, this is the battlefield, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and to win you have to black out the other side and finish them off, right? So that shouldn't be your goal every single encounter, right? Like in this particular encounter, in this particular side quest, they encountered some soldiers from this rival province. They tried to talk their way out of it. They failed the roll, so they had to basically kill the soldiers. They got one to go with them. They encountered a couple other things. They tried. Well, his party wanted to negotiate, but because they were soulbound or partially undead, Alvis negotiated by casting daylight. Went ahead and got that handled, and so. Killed the vampire eventually.
He was like, these guys were supposed to be your allies. I was like, well, they shouldn't have been undead. It's their own fault.
They were here and undead on purpose.
That's right.
So anyway, so basically, they're kind of busted up from that, and then they get down to the bottom, and realistically, they very easily could have got to the purple worm fully able to fight, right? Like they.
Yeah, I know it kind of has to be part of like the possibilities of what could happen, but was anything that happened in that game planned to happen? Like, was it your intention that this was gonna happen? That we were gonna fight the first? Like, I know you thought it was a possibility that it could.
No, actually, I thought that you guys would win them over by zealousy. Like, I thought that like your zealot mentality. You were gonna. I just assumed, like, I don't know why. I just assumed you're pretty lucky with your rolls. Like, I just assumed that you were gonna win the morale checks and stuff, and they were gonna be like, you know what? Like, I understand. Like, I'm on your team.
Right.
Get this out of here so these undead don't attack us. We see undead here. Blah 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 blah. And maybe like as a group, the soldiers help you fight the undead, or you get the undead on your side too, even better.
Right.
Right. Like,
because that would work.
And instead, he kills the group, the soldier troop. He kills the undead. The undead beat him up pretty good. They travel down the fissure. They get beat up traveling down. They see the purple worm. They're like, we're unable to heal right now. There's no way we can do this. And so Immolatus cast. Some of you know where I got that name. Immolatus casts Hold Person and Hold Monster, and voila, like purple worm's int wisdom is like a 1. So you know, they managed to succeed, and that's what I'm saying, guys. Like in that encounter when they got to the purple worm, like I knew that they could cast Hold Monster, and that would be a hard check for that purple worm to make. Even though he has, I think, a 1 inner wisdom, I think his overall bonus is a -1. Still, like it's not like a -4 or whatever it should be, but
right.
it's like a -1. But like even still, and he could have, you know, passed his second or third check, right? And I don't know, did he have any more Hold Monsters left, or
yep, he had more spells.
So he could have continued to keep casting it and keeping the purple worm at bay, right? And so, especially as you get higher level, you know, you guys are around what, 13?
Yeah.
You know, you guys are around level 13 right now. I've been playing, you know, almost 2 years, and not every encounter is meant to be, I have to fight this thing to the end. You know, like that was using cunning and intelligence to get through that encounter, right? And as you get higher level, like there should be more encounters like that. There should be more encounters. You know, one of the things Corey said to one of the other local DMs one time that I heard was that he said you design your world to target your party. So if your party is weak against arcane, they run up against arcane a lot. Instead of it just being this is the story, this is what happens, you have them. You know, your party's weak against melee, so there's a whole lot of melee happening. Or your party is weak against curses, so in this land there's a lot of curses going on. And you know, Corey was right in saying, I forget how you said it, but you basically said that's not how the world works. That's not how the cosmos works. Like the story should be told, and it doesn't matter what group partakes that quest, whether it's 4 fighters and a wizard, or 4 fighters and a cleric, or 3 rangers. You know, the story should just be the story, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
How did you say it? How did you explain it?
Basically, what I said is that when you're designing monsters, like you have to kind of have their ecosystems and stuff like that in mind, right? Like when he was looking at encounters for us, a big part of his encounters were like, look in the monster manual, see what the party's weak against, and throw it out there. It didn't matter if the monster fit in that ecosystem or not.
Right.
It was just, you know, let's just throw it out there because that's what the party's weak against. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't throw things in there that the party's weak against. I'm just saying that when you do it, it needs to make sense for the story.
Right. So like, case in point, if you know your party is weak against silver, let's say you're playing a game where the characters are lichens. Okay, let's say you're a game where you play the game begins when your village is attacked and you manage to survive and you're lichens. Okay, and you grow up, and let's say that you're were crocodiles or were rats or something, and you serve the were rat flea bottom, and flea bottom sends you on all these quests. The average person is not carrying a silver sword. But what Corey was saying is, in this guy's particular situation, the average guy would be carrying a silver sword, right?
Right.
That's what he's saying. So, the only way that guy would be naturally carrying a silver sword is if lycanthropy is known in the area, it's bad, and he's higher up because silver's expensive, right? So, I'm a big fan in games where someone, when the cleric role, when the healer role is not fully covered, and you have like a paladin and a ranger instead, and so you have like 2 sub healers, and they have to like split up the healing. That's kind of cool. Or like if you don't really have a tank, so you have two striker type characters who are like, divvying back and forth on playing tank. Like, it kind of creates a bond between characters. Like in our game, there's a really cool bond between Alvis and Tegan, a wizard and a cleric, and then there's a bond between Tegan and Agrimortius, 2 very, very different wizards. They try to share spells as much as they can, but it costs money and XP to put it in their spell book, and but they, Agrimortius is more of a damage dealer, and Tegan is more of a utility, right?
Right.
So but it creates a bond, because they're like, well, I know that Agrimortius will deal with minions and the bombardment and all the damage, but I got to make sure that we have the resources and the utility we need to get away to stay alive. I got to make sure that our damage dealers are hasted, or you know what I mean. So when you have a unique party, the more unique your party dynamic, the better off your character development will go on its own. Right?
Yeah, which I did want to make a point about you said not having like a specific healer, but having instead multiple
off healers,
which is actually what's happening in another game that I'm in. We have, instead of one dedicated cleric, we have a druid, a ranger, and a bard, all of which are diverting at least some of their power off to making sure that the party can stay up.
And one of the talking about clerics a lot, there was a question I saw on the D&D feedback forum, 5th edition feedback forum, and I see a lot of questions in there, and I'm not one of those people that's gonna say there's no such thing as a stupid question, because there are a lot of stupid questions out there, but most of the questions I see are pretty legit. I saw a question the other day that it didn't bother me. But sometimes I question how people come up with ideas for characters, and I think they do things just to be problematic, right? And so I'm going to tell you how to decipher if one of your players or DMs is problematic. For example, in my world there are no Drow, because Drow are exclusive to Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms, Warforged exclusive to Eberron. Using the stat block is one thing, but using them for what they are and bringing them over is it's just not cool, right? Like it doesn't make sense, And so if I sit at a game and Corey here's the DM and he says he's made his own world, right? And he says, in my world there was the great elf war of 1463, when all known elves were wiped from the planet. The only elves that are known to exist are those that were driven underground. Those that were driven underground over time became Drow. So in Corey's particular world, in this example, the only type of elves that exist or dark elves that are stat blocked is Drow. And I say, hey, I'm going to play a wood elf. I'm being problematic. Okay, so same scenario. Guy asks, is it possible to play an atheist cleric? Yeah, of course it's possible. You could make a really, really neat storyline using the stigmata approach. But for the most part, clerics are there's hundreds of priests in the world that are dedicated to, for example, in my world, Samkarn, like you are. But out of the thousands of priests in the northern hemisphere, etc., he's probably one of 1,000 that actually gets spells, which makes him special. That's how in my world I differentiate a cleric from a priest. Priest is someone who handles a church or handles a belonging, but maybe has cantrips, right? Maybe has cantrips. If you're a full-blown cleric, you get spells from your god. Just because you're a priest of a god or a faith or a power doesn't mean you get spells. So if you're not praying to anything, there has to be a reason why something is giving you powers. And I see that more closely resembling a warlock than I do a cleric. But you could play it as a cleric, right? So you don't believe in the gods, and your goal is to disprove that the gods exist because you have all these cleric spells, and I'm using Forgotten Realms here for a second. You have all these cleric spells that come to you, and yet you worship no gods. You offer no gods any sacrifice or any homage, anything like that. And maybe Cyric is trying to get you to convince people that the gods are no longer exist, because Cyric is trying to weaken their worshippers and weaken their power source, because he's stealing portfolios again. So there's a way to make the atheist cleric work. If you don't care, if your DM doesn't care about story, then yeah, I'm a cleric and I don't worship anything. These are my domains. Move on. But if you want a story behind it, you're going to have to get pretty creative to have an atheist cleric.
Yeah. I have seen some recommendations on actually how to do it, because I heard that and I immediately thought, there's no way. But apparently there is some very unique ways you can do it by, instead of following a deity, following a specific order or a specific code of law. Not so much the deity itself, but you're a caster that has learned how to weave divine magic from the world around it by following this specific code.
Or maybe the world's different, right? Maybe the DM's world's different. Maybe there's like this captured god on Earth that you're siphoning your powers from. You don't believe he's a god, but because he's not like this all-powerful being.
You maybe think it's arcane.
Yeah.
You're pulling powers from a god or something.
And it all comes down to different worlds, different DM rulings, and different player ideas.
And I don't think any of that's bad. I don't think any of that's bad. I think an atheist cleric, if done correctly, could be fun. I think it could be cool. But at the same time, I think an atheist cleric would create a lot of problems for the party, because in Corey's game here that he just explained, and you're siphoning powers from a god, that god occasionally is able to strengthen his powers enough to send dreams out to loyal followers who he is sending out to kill you for siphoning powers, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, doesn't that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're running a module and you go, well, that's not in the module. So you throw a few extra encounters when they get to the city. Now the city is half destroyed. An entire ward gets destroyed because these things are after them. They probably don't want them in the city anymore. Like, you can do so much with it. And talking about another question that came up is a guy said, he's talking about using hit dice, how, in my game, they may go several sessions without using hit dice fully, but they always kind of use them. And I think that hit dice are fine, especially in a true dungeon dive. When I began this game in beta, it was 1 hour is a short rest and a full day is an extended rest. And when that game ends, I will move to 1 day is a short rest, 1 week is an extended rest, which is the variant, the DM's guide, right? That's how we've always done it before, and that's actually how one of my other games in Beaumont's being run, and it works fine.
And I think I actually commented on that, saying like of the variant rules, I actually like that one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too, because as a DM, it gets hard when your party tries to rest after, we're only level 7 and like both those squirrels attacked us at the same time. So I need my superiority back rest. And like you can just like either, just be a punk and just keep sending stuff at them so they don't rest, or other things can happen. Once they're actually actively in a dungeon, then by dungeon I mean a dungeon crawl, a temple, a shrine. They're actually doing a dive. They're with things moving around and ceilings falling in, being old. Like they shouldn't get as many rests.
Mm-hmm.
And if they rest after every short thing, other things are going to come in there, right? Like, it's only natural, Like if you go after an infestation and you kill one cockroach, and you go, man, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to go take a nap, take a week off. I'm going to go back and kill another one later. You're probably never going to kill the infestation, right?
No.
So
it's like dungeons are not meant to be static. I remember reading when I was first kind of looking at how to be a DM. It's like they offered the static dungeon and the dynamic dungeon. And I kind of looked at it and I'm like, why would you even offer making a dungeon static? I mean, I understand if you're trying to teach new players how the game works, right. But things are moving around. You don't just walk into a room and there are 3 orcs that are sitting there. They've known you're in the dungeon the entire time because they heard you killing people, but they stayed in that room until you decided to walk in.
And guys, some of the funnest encounters you can do for your party dynamic to make your party fun is that, if you're going back to encounters a little bit, if you go to if you have a party, let's say your party is, you have 2 fighters, a cleric, a warlock, and a bard. Okay? You have no arcane caster, true caster, right? and you do this dungeon, and at the end of the dungeon, you only get half your level in hit dice back per extended rest. So if I'm level 10, I got 7 hit dice gone. To start of the next day, I have 2 hit dice gone already, which means dungeons are meant to be long, right?
Yeah.
Dungeons are meant to be long, and especially at higher level, right? So, my thing is, I think that when using your hit dice, when going into dungeons, people have this concept of, oh, I don't want my team to spend the next 10 sessions in a dungeon dive. Why not? When they get back to town, they're going to be happy. Don't just fast forward the game because you want to push them out of something. I think that some of the greatest encounters a party can have are based on random encounters. Like, it's not the end solo boss, it's not the high orc chief that took the castle that you're there to kill. It's the Remoras that walked in there and the 4 people that are coming after it to kill it. And maybe those things see magical items that you have, and they're like, we're here, we're going to kill y'all too. You killed the Remoras, they see you're beat up. Kill these guys and take their stuff too. We're going to be heroes. We're going to bring them back to town and say that we tried to save them, but we couldn't. We're really going to be heroes. So, all those things, I promise you, one of my favorite ones I did was many years ago. There was an NPC party that the team kind of helped, kind of hurt. They kind of went back and forth. They were kind of competing, and the party went after this dungeon, and they were in the dungeon for like 14, 15 sessions, and they were so beat up. They cleared everything out. They were so excited, and when they got out of the dungeon, the party was waiting on them. The other party was waiting on them, and they knew they couldn't fight him. They were so beat up, and they were basically like, surrender everything you have, or you're dead. And so they basically surrendered everything they have. They got captured, and they got sold into slavery, and they got sent a long ways away. And their whole goal from that point on was for vengeance, right? Which had nothing to do with the main story. It just happened to happen that way. And so unique encounters, random encounters in a dynamic dungeon can be really, really cool to a unique party or any party, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
What about you, Corey? You've been in a few games, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the most dynamic or unique party that you've seen?
It's a bit tough, because most of our games have around 7 or 8 people in it, so you're gonna have like a big bunch of people.
Okay, so instead of thinking race class, perspective, alignment, because there's a lot of ways you can have party dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, like, in your game, we have half the party's evil, half the party's good.
Yeah.
And there's only one Elvis.
That's right.
There's only one Elvis.
So that's an interesting dynamic, and it creates like a lot of inter-party conflict on how to approach different situations and how to deal with getting different things. Even last session there was an argument where this one of the things that he uses is like blood, right? The people that acquired these blood orbs didn't want to give it to any of the other party members because of their evil tendencies, even though it's pretty much purely beneficial. Like, there's a possibility that something bad can happen, but for the most part it's a good thing that they get it, right? Like for party cohesiveness, it makes them stronger. But they were just debating on whether or not they should have these because you know, they do bad things and they don't want to make them too powerful and then not be able to stop them later. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, funny story. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going to come with that later. You know, and that's another thing. Talking about the blood, right? So, without going into further description of the blood, we've talked about it before. That's one of the things, you know, I want to encourage you guys to do as players and DMs is find things that can be exclusive to your game that can help define a character, right? So maybe he finds a way, you know, maybe he's a wizard, but without actually taking warlock levels, he has some pact which gives him something. Maybe it's a wider spell slot. Maybe it's the arcane mastery or the magic initiate feat.
Yeah.
The magic initiate feat or free spell slots. I'm not telling you to overpower your characters. I'm telling you maybe a devil comes and teaches him how to do things so he has advantage on persuasion checks or something, or deception checks. You know, give things to your characters and players to help define them. The next time, you know, he plays an orc, barbarian, frenzied berserker, I want it to be different than Caltech. I want Caltech to stand aside. You know, like in this case, as an example, his next, if he ever plays an orc, frenzied berserker again,
probably not going to be a baker.
He's probably not going to be a baker. So, and that's not something he came up with. That's just something that happened to him. And he just kind of took to it, you know?
One offhand joke and you become a baker.
Yeah, so, and people have died for not appreciating those roles.
They have.
And so, you know, just make sure that, you know, in my game, another dynamic the party's acquiring now is they're acquiring like underlings, like heroes underneath them. They're acquiring people that are swearing fealty. They're acquiring armies. So now they can attack on several fronts because they have so much going on. They can't be everywhere at once, but they have more resources than just magical items and weapons. They have other things that they at their disposal that allow them to go and do various things, right? And so, and I always thought that was kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like I always thought it was kind of cool when, you know, Condor the Mighty, maybe going to the Stone Crown Mountains, but his armies have went to defend the innocent city of Seraphim Falls. So, or his armies went to go back up the city of Blackmoor because they want Blackmoor's allegiance and alliance later. And so he's managing to do, and maybe he's got a group of underlings and hirelings that he sent out to take out some lycanthropes. Because the lycanthropes have recently raided several villages and in cities, and say that those cities had money and those lycanthropes have that money. And they're like, well, we need that wealth, and we couldn't go attack other villages without starting a war, but we can kill those lycanthropes and take that money and be heroes. So he's attacking on three fronts. He's taking care of the lycanthropes, he's going to the Stone Crown Mountains, and he's defending, you know, Blackmoor, whatever. So, you know, it's really cool when your characters feel that they have the ability to do so many things, even though it's just one person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with that does come a good bit of responsibility, because we spent like an hour or two sitting and deciding what we were going to do with our armies during that session.
Right. So 2 sessions ago, we broke it down to where they had 3 fronts, and they had all these resources, and they had to set it down and decide who was going where. And as a DM, I got to tell you, like, you know, they say that you don't really win in the game of Dungeons and Dragons, but as a DM, if your party is like so adamant and passionate and about who's going where, that I could have went and had lunch at, you know, the restaurant down the road for an hour or 2 and came back because I wasn't needed, like, that's winning. You know, they put that much effort into it. And, you know, one of the guys says all the time, you know, he plays his background was bounty hunter, and we've talked about him before. He's a wizard. He had a low int score, and he became a wizard later by proxy. And he used to go fight in the pits to get information to go chase these bounties down, and he's like, I would have never made a character like this on my own, which went during character creation, and talking about it now, his party balance, right? So like his character is very unique in the sense that he wasn't a scholar or an acolyte, or he didn't do all those things, but because of that, he's extremely resourceful and durable. And you want to make sure, like when you're building characters, that I know a lot of people, probably 90% of the people go, oh, I don't need to take this skill because this background already gives it to me, let me change my skills over. If that happened to me, I'd probably just leave it and just be a skill behind. I mean, I'm not saying that's what most people would do. I'm just saying that don't not pick a background because it didn't give you the skill you wanted. You know what I mean? Like,
personally, I look at it and I pick background before I pick class, because it kind of plays into the character creation.
That's what you're supposed to. That's what I do. Is I say that you pick your race as you grow, your stats become. So you roll your stats, you pick your background, and you pick your class, right? And then you find out the character that you have. What does that negate? It negates, I need a lot of movement because I'm going to be a very, very rangy rogue, so I'm going to go wood elf. I found a background that gave me an additional bonus to movement, so I'm going to pick that background. You know what I mean? Like, so
when they're required by the DM, it prevents gamers from making these crazy, ridiculous characters, which it's not always a bad thing. It just depends on the game that you're in. I personally prefer a more story-based character. That being said, I have created ridiculously crazy characters in other games. I like the aspect of having a good story in my character before I start putting together the mechanics of how they fight.
What about you, Corey?
I'm good with whatever. No, yeah, it's like I'm honestly, like, I like as I said before, I'm cool with making whatever characters. Like the characters I had to make up, like, that were part of my army for that. We did 3d6 straight down, and most of them had shitty stats, and it didn't really affect anything that much in the grand scheme of things, right? Like,
no, not really.
I think I made sure they all had good con at least, and then everything else was secondary.
We want to hear what you guys think about your party creation. I actually tried something with one of the so the Saturday game, actually we've done several one-offs with other players. I'm running a Beaumont game that's another part of the story that's taking place in the same story at the same time. And I keep session reviews of each session, I think it's been a pretty good story so far. And I did a thing for them that was a little different, and I wanted to try it where they rolled their stats, but as they rolled their stats, they could place it. So like they roll 3d6, they get a 13. They can put that 13 any stat they want. Then they roll another one. Now they can't change it once they put it, right? So if you want to roll or 46, whatever it is, if you want to roll your stats and you don't want the point buy, you don't want the pre-generated, I feel like when you tell someone to pre-generate their stats is when you start seeing the min-max OP very weak in certain aspect stuff, right? Like you're not going to see, I'll challenge you. Tell your next group to pre-generate characters, and then I want you to tell me how many people have 13 straight down. Right? There's going to be a 20 somewhere. Okay, so, or an 18 or whatever the highest is you can start with. So, the point is, you want to, you want your character, talking about party balance, if your strongest to hit is with a falchion, that doesn't mean you can't have a bow and arrow on you. Like, not everything's going to get in melee. Yep. Not everything's going to go, oh my god, Caltech's using his favored falchion. I better go fly up next to him to make this favorable for him. That's not how creatures think. Yep. And I see too often, we talked in the Encounters episode, how people playing dragons just have the dragons just fly down next to them. Like, they have a fly speed. Welcome to Dragons in 5th edition. Like that's what they do.
They fly up top, hit you from below, so you can't hit them.
Correct.
They go on, they eat their meal, and go back to
and
their
their breath recharges, so they'll just keep flying around until their breath recharges, and we'll just keep doing this. And so that's Welcome to Dragons in 5th edition. So talking about party balance and counterbalance, I think players have a sense of accomplishment when they start weak and they become strong and they earn it. You know what I mean? And I don't think that you get that with pre-generated, which is why I'm not the biggest fan of pre-generated characters. I'm not telling you that you should make someone have horrible stats. If you tell them to roll 46 and they can, whatever their lowest stat is, they can re-roll a secondary set. Like take 46, whatever your lowest stat is, or choose one stat, you can roll 46 again and try to up it or something. But when you tell someone to roll their stats, I don't think everyone at the table should be even. I don't think, like if we all took math tests, we're not all going to make 94s. If we all took history tests, we're not all going to make 89s. And if we all played basketball, we would not all have draws. It would not be 1-to-1 indefinitely, right? People have different strengths and abilities, and I think that some people should be stronger than others.
And especially with 5th edition, I think they balanced it in a way where your stats aren't as defining as they used to be. As I said, that the characters I created just the other day, they all had pretty shitty stats, and all that it really affected, it was like you look at your sheet, say, oh, this caster has a shitty casting stat, so obviously I'm not going to cast save versus spells. I'm going to cast spell to hit rolls, or I'm going to cast buff spells instead. I think that they incorporated ways to get around having bad stats for every class, barring like a melee person with like a 7 con.
Yeah, con is kind of important for melee. No matter how good your armor is, if you have a shitty con, it's going to come back and hurt you eventually.
Right. And that's another thing, talking about party balance. We talked about this before, I believe. I heard that in Adventure League, we talked about how the Aarakocras aren't a playable legal race. I still say the half elves are the master race of 5th edition. They're just strong in everything. Like the only thing that they're weak in is nothing. Like they get dark vision, they can pit their +2s and whatever they want. You know what I mean? Like they got everything. And if you notice, a lot of your power gamers play half elves. So in 4th edition, it was your dwarves that were the master race, but they've lost that title.
Dwarves are still master race.
Only those loyal to Elvis, though. Yeah. But talking about races, I think for the most part, most of the races are pretty balanced. They're pretty strong. We've talked about the Fire Ganassi being pretty good. The Aarakocras are going to be good at low level. Then not really. They're not going to be anything special. That being said, I can see an Aarakocra monk being a problem.
Yeah.
But outside of the Aarakocra monk, I don't see there being too many issues. I actually have one on my Beaumont game, and he's okay. He's not tough. But outside of that, I think we've covered party balance pretty well.
Well, how would you rate? So let's actually go into the kind of the class roles here for a minute, and talk about your tank, your DPS, your heals. Like, how would you rate? Like, everybody can pretty much do everything in this edition except
here and there.
So how would you rate? Like, so let's start with a tank. Who do you think's the best tank class wise?
Fighter.
Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would argue either fighter or paladin. Paladin, in terms of filling the tank role of helping protect other people in the team, just because of the aura that they get as they level.
Right.
Because you can protect people from not only by attracting the damage, but like, I'm up in your face, I'm hitting you hard. You're also, anybody that's nearby you, you're protecting them from certain things.
There's an argument. I mean, it really falls to three. I mean, it falls to the fighter, it falls to the paladin. And I agree with everything you just said, John. I agree with everything you just said. And I'm trying to speak universally, like thinking from levels 1 to 20, not just once they get strong.
Right.
I'm thinking that...
I mean, universally...
Because by the time the paladin gets all those cool bonuses and buffs, the party's going to be strong enough to where they're going to have other super utility too.
Well, look at it this way. What does the fighter have that the paladin doesn't at low level?
I'm saying that if I was a fighter with a good AC, I can arguably get more attacks, but if I need them, or I can just dodge and just stand in the way. Now, I know a paladin can get the same AC and dodge, and he has heals, but in the event that I can transfer to attacking, but the best tank I've seen so far was Azaric, the cleric. Walking up with a high AC, dodging with Spirit Guardians is pretty dumb. I mean, that should be your go-to maneuver. I mean,
yeah.
Walk up, Spirit Guardians, dodge. That was awesome. I mean, and that was something that he came up with on his own, spur of the moment. So I think characters doing that's pretty cool. That should be. I think a character doing that is more effective than probably anything a fighter or paladin could do.
I think that paladins might get Spirit Guardians too.
I think at later levels they might. I can't remember because I haven't ever played a paladin to its fullest extent.
Yeah, I'd say paladin's the best tank. Honestly, just simply because they're great. They're great at making saves, and they're great at AC tanking, and they have D10, so they're pretty good at hit points wise too. They're kind of like the best overall. And they can stay on par with damage from a fighter via their smites. So like a fighter may get 2 attacks and then action surge 4 attacks, but your paladin can smite for roughly the same damage,
and he can call
sometimes
smite
more,
and he can call smite upon hit, right? So he doesn't he has to call smite and lose a spell slot,
right?
So. And I'm glad you're bringing up the paladin, right? Because one of the things, again, still considering party balance, was one of the really cool things back in the day was that you had to have these crazy stats, and you were rolling 3d6 to have the opportunity to play a paladin or a ranger and a few other classes. And what's funny is if one of your friends was like, "Oh my god, man, I'm going to get a paladin out of this. I'm going to get a paladin out of this." Everybody wanted to keep that paladin alive because the paladin was like an overpowered class, but having one in the party meant the party was strong, and if he died, there was no replacing him.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not disagreeing that overall the paladin's probably a better just pure tank, and he has heals, and he has a good AC, same hit points. Super saves. He probably is a better pure tank. But I'm just saying, overall, the ability to transition from tank to DPS if needed and go back and forth.
Yeah. I think that
kind of falls to fighter.
It falls into different categories. In terms of the tank that can deal damage, I think fighter would win most of the time. In terms of the tank that can heal the party and buff the group, I think cleric probably falls into that just because of the number of spells that they get. If you want the best combination of the two, then that's where you find your paladin.
Yeah,
because they can do both of those roles with relative
But
ease.
you have to remember, the longer the day goes on, the less spells the paladin has, and the fighter, every time he short rests, everything comes back. Mm-hmm. That's why I was putting my money on the fighter, because I just think that long dungeon crawl, Paladin runs out of smites, this, that, and the other, runs out of spells, blah, blah, blah. And the fighter's like, oh, short rest, give me my superiority die back.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of why I put my money on the fighter, but I clearly see why you're saying Paladin, and I don't disagree.
Well, and even if they don't, in terms of the fighter dealing more damage, the superiority die does do a little more damage, but I would put my money on champion fighter for that.
Or
just
either
because,
one. Yeah.
Just because of the expanded crit range.
Yeah, it's so like the champion fighter is better, does more, I would say, consistent DPS over a long period of time.
No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Next question. Let's see. We talked about tanks. So really, 4E broke it down into the best. You have strikers, leaders, controllers, and defenders. Mm-hmm. Let's talk control.
Control. They actually did away with a lot of control in this edition comparatively, right?
Yeah, they changed it. I don't know if they did away with it as much as they changed it. So like your classic control spell is fireball. You got a score of minions coming at you. You fireball them. You know what I mean? Like your AOE's, your traditional control type was AOE's. Mm-hmm. So anyone with AOE's was known for control. On the same token, walls can control the battlefield too, right? You can stop people with walls. In 4E, there was a class called the Invoker.
Yeah. And
the Invoker would like summon things and like summon like angelical creatures to put on the field that would stop you from being able to get around them, which was another type of control, right? So there are various ways of making control. Animate objects is control, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. Putting things on the battlefield both hinders others and allows you to attack, which is both control and
changing the battlefield. Sleet Storm,
big control.
Yeah. So talking about the different varieties of control, who do you guys think got it on control?
Druid.
Yeah, Druid
or Wizard.
I would actually toss in Sorcerer for the running as well, because of being able to spend the points to adjust their spells, as with old metamagic feats.
Yeah. Because
those were pretty strong back in the day, and they still are strong. They're just much more limited now.
I gotta give it to the Wizard, and here's why. So, and everyone has their own house rules, but for the purpose of the show. And not to sound biased, we're gonna go rules as written. Okay, we're gonna go raw just to be fair. So, assuming that, and help me out here. I know the Wizard's supposed to get 2 spells per level, right?
Right.
Not excluding if the DM allows them to buy spells from.
He could potentially get more, but he's supposed to get 2 per level.
Yep.
Right. So let's assume he gets 1 per level that he finds or buys, and he gets 2 per level. So he's roughly getting 3 a level. That's a lot.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's a lot of spells. Let's just say that he gets 2 a level. The Wizard can literally handpick the spells he needs for control if he's wanting to be a control wizard. Mm-hmm. He can handpick walls and AoEs and focus on it. Now, mind you, the Druid, and I don't mean the Moon Druid, I don't mean Circle of the Moon.
Land.
I believe the Land Druid is... it's 51, 49, 50-50 between the Land Druid and the Wizard. But I think mind you, Druids being primal or divine, they're supposed to be able to just pick whatever spells they want to. The fact that they're both able to pick their spells, but Wizards are known for having a wider variety. Mm-hmm. I feel like I have to give it to the Wizard because of the understanding that they have a wider variety in options. Mm. So that's the only reason I say it's like 51-49 to the Wizard.
It's like Druids are known for very much control, summoning, and minor abilities to heal. Wizards are really known for control as what I would consider their primary ability. I mean, no one else can control quite like a Wizard can, with the versatility that a Wizard can. I've seen a lot of people use it for DPS, which is a viable option, though not my personal opinion, not the best option. There are ways to do it with other characters.
Yeah, because you're just blowing spell slots nonstop.
Exactly, and you don't get those back.
Right.
Well, you get a couple back on a short rest, but
on your first short rest of the day.
First short rest of the day. Sorcerers, same thing. I believe they get a couple more spell slots, but their selection of spells is greatly reduced. The only thing that puts them in the running for it, in my opinion, is because of the ability to augment their spells with the sorcerer points or whatever it is. I don't know the
I can respect
full
that.
mechanics on that.
I put my money on the druid simply because the druid has more. A lot of the wizard's control spells are more single target based. Besides their walls, but the druid gets walls as well. On top of getting actual like wide area, like lockdown stuff, like restrained or
entangle type spells.
Yeah, entangle type spells. Which I think is just fantastic for battlefield control. And a lot of their later level spells are purely control, right? Like
No, they are.
Yeah, like the tsunami and the reverse gravity and
that's what I'm saying. Like I said, to me, the land druid and the wizard is 50-50, 51-49, give or take. You could put either one on either side. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that the land druid, the only reason I say I seem to lean towards wizard more than druid, and I think druid is one of the stronger classes as a whole. Like if you had a fighter, a wizard, a cleric, and a thief, and you said you want an extra wizard or a druid, the answer is druid. Right? And I don't care what circle he has.
right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's fighter, wizard, druid, thief, or fighter, druid, cleric, thief, I don't know which one of those. Like arguably you'd want the one with the wizard and the druid because you're covering primal / divine and arcane, but I don't know if the other one is a bad option. It's never bad to have a druid.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like no one's ever gonna say, oh man, I hate this, why'd you have to put a druid in the party? God, they suck. No one's ever gonna, and if they do, they shouldn't be playing the game. Druids are strong. They're very strong. Mm-hmm. They're extremely durable. And they have a lot of pure control spells. I guess for locking down the battlefield, pure control, Druid has a lot of good spells. The Wizards control, they have things like Sleet Storm, like we talked about, and they have a lot of walls, but
theirs is like hybrid control damage.
Yeah, theirs is a different kind of control.
Yeah.
When I was kind of giving it to the Wizard, there's several ways of control, and the Wizard covers the variety of all control types better than any other class. And so when I said it as a pure overall controller, that's why I'm saying to the Wizard, and I think the reason why Corey's saying to the Druid is because in locking down the battlefield, which is what control is designed to do, the Druid spells are specifically spec'd for that.
Right.
Yeah. So what's the next one?
So we've covered tank, we've covered control.
Striker, defender.
Yeah, striker.
Or striker, leader.
Striker, leader, yeah.
Striker. Let's do that.
I would say warlock. Warlock is in the running for that.
So we're talking pure classes, no like hybrid.
Right.
Yeah. You say warlock?
I say warlock's in the running for it because a lot of their spell is high damage, single target, and they get their spells back on a short rest.
Assuming that there's no magical items in the game, there's nothing, like you're just basically picking up the best natural weapon you can grab. Mm-hmm. One of my buddies told me recently that the Frenzied Berserker took the reigning as the current champion in striking damage. Now I don't know if that's like optimizing or metagaming, but based on the knowledge I have, if someone was to build a character and go from 1 to 20 overall from top to bottom, my money's on Paladin.
Vengeance Paladin.
Paladins are good strikers.
Probably the number one DPS single target in the game.
I just don't see, and that's what Bubby said. Bubby said single target Paladin still has it, but he's saying hitting several targets and doing, like, you may do 80 damage a round, but I did 60 to 3 targets.
Right.
You know, so when you're talking striker, are you talking overall damage? Or are you talking, because if it's overall damage in a round, I got to give it to the Frenzied Berserker, but
Well, let's talk single target and AoE.
So AoE goes to Frenzied Berserker, like most pure damage done in a round. I got to give it to the Frenzied Berserker, but 1v1, the Vengeance Paladin is king, right?
Yeah,
it is.
There is no second. He takes second too. So he takes gold, silver, and bronze.
There you go.
He's taking all those medals home.
Monk can be pretty good. I think a warrior is a little bit better than a monk as a striker.
Action Surge gives it to him.
Yeah. It's kind of at 50-50 because early game a monk will out damage almost everybody because they get access to 4 attacks very early.
And they have key.
Yeah. But as the game progresses, monks get more defensive and warriors start doing more and more damage.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's kind of cool they change roles like that a little bit, right? Yeah.
So those guys are similar. I think warrior edges out overall though. Rogue, if rogue's getting sneak attack every round, rogue's on par. You have
to assume that a rogue, I think it's gonna get sneak attack every other round or every 3 rounds. So like assuming, let's just say that you get sneak attack every other round, I'd say the rogue's up there.
Yeah.
But I don't think that because if your tank's doing what he's doing, he's close to somebody.
Right.
And if he's close to somebody, the rogue can hit and get a sneak attack.
Right.
So you assume majority of the time the rogue should be sneak attacking, right? And that certainly puts the rogue up there. The weakness of the rogue is limited to the 1 attack around.
Yeah.
From open to close.
One question. Somebody in the chat asked if we are looking forward to Persona 5.
If we're looking to what?
Persona 5. I don't personally know it, but would you care to explain?
Yeah, it's a video game,
okay.
RPG. It's kind of one of those old school. It's one of the more challenging ones out there, and it's kind of very, very, very. It's very like enemy, like know your enemy type stuff. It's a little bit like Pokemon because you can get these guys and you can
gotta catch them all.
Yeah, you can. They have different ways of doing it, but you can transform into these different people based on like who you fight and stuff. I remember
that. What was the question?
The question was literally just, are you looking forward to Persona 5?
Okay.
Which, given I don't really know anything about it, I'm going to go off Corey's opinion of it.
Persona 3, one of my favorite RPGs. Awesome game.
Really?
Yeah, I'll just say that.
Okay. Well, cool.
Very cool.
Well, we'll definitely have to check it out now, right? So we're going to check it out now.
All right.
We'll look at it for a future show, I guess. I'll have to look into it.
We will make a show about it just for you. Once Corey beats it. So continuing with Striker,
right? Yeah, you guys are still on Striker.
Any other contenders?
No, Vengeance Paladin pretty much took it, and Frenzied Berserker pretty much took it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Frenzied Berserker does do it well, but they can fall. Like I would see them falling behind some of the other classes.
I think,
and I'm playing a Frenzied Berserker.
I think on one of the forums there's like a mathematical equation, like one of the guys put for overall damage per round, not single target, but just overall damage per round. And I know a lot of you guys out there thinking, well, caster this, caster that. You have to think longevity throughout the day and the fact that you're losing spells when a Frenzied Berserker and a Paladin can do this.
Well, Frenzied Berserker loses that pretty quickly. We only get like 5 rages a day at level 13.
Yeah, but 5 rages a day. That's
5 encounters a day.
Yeah, you assume it's per combat.
That's per. Well, yeah, assume it's per combat. But if anytime you get dropped, that rage is gone. You have to wake up and rage again.
Yeah, but when you cast spells, like the spell's gone, whether it gets countered or not.
Yeah.
So, the thing is, like, you can't counter a fighter's action surge, right? Like, you know what I mean? So, again, we're not talking about one combat a day who's going to do the most damage. I'm talking about in the style of which the game is playing.
Having 6 to 8 encounters in a day.
Yeah. Who at the end is going to do the most damage? Like, my answer is Paladin. You know, like, my answer is Paladin. my variant option is Frenzied Berserker, depending on the type of encounters. Now, last but not least, we have leaders. There's only one answer, I think. There's only one answer. Bards.
Bard.
I mean, come on.
There really is. You would be hard pressed to find someone who could do the leader position as well as a bard.
So, again, we've talked about this before, and one of the I don't know what they were doing when they made the bard. Like, maybe they were drunk. I don't know. Like there's no way someone they played the old Nintendo game of Bard's Tale, looked at all the old variants of the bard from D&D history, and said, "This we should call the bard." It is not a bard. It is a supercaster. Okay, it can do everything everyone else can do, just a little bit better. So, there is no reason for a bard to have 9th level spells. There's just not. Okay, it has expertise like a rogue and 9th level spells like a wizard. Like that's goofy.
Yeah, the other hybrid classes get capped out at 5th level. I'm really unsure why.
But the bard caps out at 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit unsure why they made that design choice.
I cannot for the life of me, like, I've literally like spent hours trying to figure out like what they were thinking. Like I mean it is a true curiosity now. Like, because like you have the paladin, caps at 5th, ranger caps at 5th. I would have even been okay if the ranger got 6 because the paladin's a little bit stronger than the ranger.
Right, and you look at Eldritch Knight or monk, like the elemental monk. Their top tier spells are around equal to 5th level spells.
Yeah, right. But this one variant, this one thing, the variable in the whole thing is 9th level casting bards, and the greatest part about it is they don't have to be bard spells. I think I'll take your druid spells you were talking so awesomely about.
Yeah. Well, there is restrictions on that, and I was reading over that because at first I heard everything you were saying. I'm like, there's no way that this could be as bad as what everyone's describing.
There are a few restrictions.
There are restrictions on it in that, like, you only get, like, I think I calculated out as like at 20th level you get like 5 spells that are not on your class list, and they have to be of a level you can cast at that time. So when you get them, it's like you got maybe a 5th level.
The trouble starts to come in.
Five spells can make a caster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, so think of it, and maybe this is just an error on their part, but the half casting classes, their unique spells are a little bit stronger to compensate for them getting them later. Right, so like a 5th level paladin spell is arguably stronger than a 5th level wizard spell.
It should be.
Yeah, but the bard can get the paladin 5th level spell before the paladin can get his own 5th level spell.
Right, and that's where your problem is, because you're saying at 20th level you should get about 5 of the magical secrets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in my opinion, I think magical secrets was a cool concept. That should have been the bard's 20th level ability, and it should have been like 1 or 2 spells.
Yeah, and that's what it was in previous editions. It was when you hit level 20, you got like 3 spells of your choosing from like 6th level or lower. Like it even had a level restriction.
I'm okay with them being 5 spells, 5th level or lower. That's still incredibly strong because you are a blended caster. I have the druid stuff, I have the wizard stuff, the sorcerer stuff. Like I have all this stuff. And I'm a little bit better at roguing than a rogue, right? Like if I expertise myself correctly, right? So or I'm on par. The only thing I don't have is sneak attack, which I don't need because I have whole person, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
So like I think the biggest the 2 biggest downfalls with 5e is the bard and their mass army combats. Like I think that those are and their mass army combats aren't exactly a fail. It just doesn't encourage people to play them. Like you don't get anything for doing it versus getting through the scenario. Like you don't get your armies. You can't build your armies to be a certain way or anything else like that. It's just kind of is what it is. And the bard, I think that they just kind of, if they would have put in stat requirements on the bard, like, like if they would have said like in order to go bard, you have to have like this feat, So really, you can't start off as a bard. Like, you can't go bard till you get a feat unless you're a human variant or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they would have done something like that, like, I would have been fine with it because the bard is an overpowered class. Again, and mind you, when I say overpowered, I don't want you to think in a 1v1 tournament the bard's going to end all win all at any level. I'm saying that if you had the traditional roles covered, striker, defender, leader, controller, and you were going to put a 5th character on the group, there is no reason, like, if you were playing for money and you had to get through the dungeon like the most efficiently possible, and you had to come to the table with a fighter, a thief, a cleric, and a wizard, and you did not know what level you were going to play at, it would be hard pressed for you to pick anything other than a bard to come to that table with. The only other exception would be druid, right? Those are your 2 options. I mean, anything else, you're just putting too many eggs in one basket, I think. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying bringing a paladin to the table wouldn't be good. I'm just saying bringing a bard to the table is going to be better because I got his 5th level spell and he's not quite there yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just goofy. Yeah. Like that is flawed every way around it. You know?
Yeah, I definitely think that in particular is an oversight that they'll probably errata at.
They have to. They absolutely have to. There's no way. And you know, this is coming from a guy who's always liked the bard. I always thought the bard was kind of cool. It was a great NPC. Like, if your characters needed like an extra guy on the field, you know, or you wanted to create a character that would be very utility for your group. You know, in the old days, the bard was perfect, but now you have to like create like just a monster type, like a person with stat blocks. You can't really use a bard because, you know, on a scale from 1 to 10, if your party's a 6 in strength, bards significantly bump them up a little bit. You know, they heal, they can do damage, they can pick locks, they can steal paladin 5th levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they did make the 5th edition bard a lot stronger than previous editions.
In any other edition.
Yeah.
The 3rd edition bard had some stuff later level that was pretty potent.
Yeah, but a lot of people, when you played bard 3rd edition, you weren't playing bard to play it out. You were playing bard to get skill requirements for other prestige classes.
That's right.
Because they got 8+ skill rank or 6+ skill ranks.
Right.
So
that's pretty much, I guess, our take on the 4 roles. As you can see, the paladin probably came up more than anything. So overall, universally, paladin's probably the
it's a very strong class.
Excluding the bard, the paladin's probably the strongest class. And the only reason I'm excluding bard from this conversation piece is I'm not saying the paladin is stronger than the bard. I'm not saying the bard is stronger than the paladin. I'm saying their roles are north and south. Their roles are purely north and south. And at later levels, the bard is going to be more useful to you than the paladin is. But overall, throughout the duration of the game, your paladin is going to be a significantly... It will make a significant increase in your party.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
What's our time?
So yeah,
we're a little bit over.
Yeah, we're about 11 minutes over.
Oh well, that's it for us, guys. Thanks for stopping in, guys. Make sure to check us out with our sponsors and everything else. Give us some feedback. We're just about done with the PDF. We got all the submissions for the first one. We're going to start putting that into the first volume, and so anyone who wants it, we'll shoot it out to you. We've been creating, stealing, adding submissions, whatever we could do to put something together. We got races, classes, archetypes, templates, monsters. You got all kinds of. We actually have encounters built, and it's kind of cool, right? So, and it's just something for you to have, free of charge, just for listening to us ramble on about our favorite pastime.
Overpowered.
Why bards are overpowered. We're changing the name of the show. Welcome back to Why Bards Are Overpowered.
Nah.
Oh, you're playing Dritz. I have a level 20 bard. It's on. It's gone.
Oh Lord.
All right, guys. I think that wraps us up for this time. Be sure to check us out in 2 weeks, and we'll see you then. We'll hopefully have that PDF ready by then. Yeah. So, all right, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for having us.
Yep.